Every 4 year India conducting this may be your prelims question. Every 4 year India conducting tiger census to know the population of the tiger, like that. Okay, and elephant census, like its population. So the species is the code word there. Population is a group of individuals of the same species. Okay, species is the code word. Yeah. Then what we discussed? Ecotone. What is that ecotone? It's a transition zone between the two different kinds of ecosystem. Okay, and had I discussed, I guess I had discussed this one, edge effect also there itself. What is edge effect? What is edge effect? And everybody, what is edge effect? What is edge effect? What is edge effect here? Last class we discussed it, right? When number of species of the ecotone surpasses the number of the adjacent the previous ecosystem, right? ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಹೊಸ ಎಕೋಸಿಸ್ಟಮಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಸ್ಪೀಷೀಸ್ ಅಥವಾ ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರೋ ಫಾನಾ ಆರ್ ಫ್ಲೋರಾ, ದೇ ಸರ್ಪಾಸಸ್ its number. Surpasses means it increases its number than the existing a natural fauna and flora of the adjoining ecosystem, right? Ecotone itself is the new kind of the transitional zone between the two different kinds of ecosystem, and sometimes, most of the times, the ecotone contains the two adjacent areas fauna and flora only. Sometimes the ecotone have its own kind of fauna and flora, and this is very rare. Like in some of the times, what happens, the newly formed ecotone, the species which prevalent in that region, they surpasses in its number than the adjacent ecosystems. That is edge effect, but it's very rare. That is not a common criteria. Okay, next we discuss. I gave a name. That's it. We didn't discuss it, right? Like what is that? Did we discuss it? Like what are the cycles we discussed in that? I just give a name, I guess. Gaseous and sedentary, phosphorus and sulfur, and I didn't go in detail. What is phosphorus? What happens? What is sulfur? What happens within that? The cycles we didn't discuss it, I guess. Okay, let us discuss today. Next, homeostasis. What is this homeostasis? Ecosystem is a self-controller, or you can say self-modifier, or you can say it modifies its numbers, or it is a self-regulator. The correct word is self-regulator. Ecosystem is a self-regulator. So within the the thing which is there in the ecosystem itself, it uses those things only to control any extremes. Extremes may be in a less in number or may be in a more in number. Ecosystem always maintain a balance between two extremes. It always in a medium. Okay, next, or you can say moderate form. Next, what we discussing? Services. What are the different kinds of services we discussed there? Direct service. And what are the direct services of the ecosystem? Oxygen, food, fodder for the animals. Next, it is a kind of producer for the, and photosynthesis producer, and rest of the food chain. It is the base for the food chain. That is it. And what are the different kinds of indirect services we discussed? I guess I gave a heading for indirect services. What is the first heading I gave? Regulatory. What is the regulatory service of our ecosystem? Consider a forest ecosystem. How it regulates, or what it regulates? It regulates what? Climate, then maybe it regulates the groundwater capacity of that region by sinking the rainwater there itself, by absorbing the rainwater by the the prevalent roots in that region. It sinks, the rainwater sinks, so that the groundwater table, you can say the groundwater table going to increases. So that is one kind of. And another, it is one of the reason for the rain. If you consider orographic rainfall and if you consider convectional rainfall, everything is dependent on a mountain and the forest. Okay. Next, what is the other services? Controlling services. What are the controlling services ecosystem will do? It controls the soil erosion, right? And it controls any kind of disaster kind of situation, natural disasters, forest fire, landslides most of the times. In a rainy season we witness landslides, and this ecosystem may reduces. It's not able to control 100%. It may reduce these chances of these imbalances. Next, supporting service. What are the kind of supporting service of the ecosystem? It provides habitat. Supports for the habitat means what? It's a living place. So it supports every other fauna and flora, being a place for them, right? Ecosystem itself create a base, because a soil is also part of the ecosystem. It itself creates a ground for its growth, and it provides oxygen, it provides water, it provides nourishment in the form of climate, right? Everything, it's a supporting services for a particular fauna and flora to grow. So it's a supporting services. Next, culture. What are the kind of culture services we discussed in last class? And I told you, culture is something specific to a region. So depending on that particular environment, that particular climate, that particular, you can say, geography, our culture going to differ. That's why India is a multicultural, diverse. These are all things I discussed, I guess. Okay, so it provide some ingredients to our culture, like our worshipping style. Everything is depending on that kind of environment where we live, right? Next, flow of energy. The only source of energy for the earth is the sun, only source of energy. And the one thing, energy neither be created nor be destroyed, but can be transferred from one form to another form. So while transferring energy, what happens? Law of 10% loss. Who gave that? Raymond Lindemann, right? So producers are the only source which extract the sun rays, or the energy which is there in the sun rays. By using sunlight and by using the carbon dioxide, it produces some amount of energy, and that energy got transferred to different levels or trophic levels of the food chain. And while transferring, because of the metabolic activity and heat, some of the amount of energy going to destroy. That is different. And in the producers, what we discussed, all the green plants. Next, in the consumers, what we discussed, there are 2-3 kinds of consumers: primary consumers or medium level, and top carnivores. Next, after the, and another thing we discussed, detritivores. What is this detritivores? How they differ from the decomposers? Detritivores, the word feed is very important, because decomposers, the word feed or engulf or eat, that word is not there in the decomposers. Detritivores means it engulf or it feed the dead organic matters. Maybe a leaf litter, maybe a stem, maybe something which is biotic, which lost its life. They feed on them, means they engulf on them, means they eat them. That because of that we call it as a detritivores. And decomposers means they secrete some enzyme on that, and with this enzyme they are going to lose that, or what they're going to disintegrate them, and it absorb the nutrients from that dead organic matter. Best example, fungi, bacteria. And fungi, what is the best example within fungi? Mushroom, right? Next, what we discussed? Food chain. What is a food chain? Like how it differ from food web? Food chain, how it differ from food web? Exactly. Food chain is unilinear, or you can say lineal food chain or lineal connections. The food web is interconnected. There is no one line. Okay, and I told you this food chain is a theoretical concept. Practically, this is not there. This kind of concept was not there in our ecosystem. And what are the kinds of food chain we discussed? Grazing and detritus. Or grazing means it starts from producers, or you can say start from green plants and ends with primary consumers. And detritivores or another food chain starts with the food chain itself starts with the dead organic matter, right, and ends with the top carnivores sometime. Next, and food web means it is interconnected one. Best example, human who are omnivorous, you can say, right. And the food web is like there is no proper line for this. It is interconnected in between the species and in between the trophic levels. Next, which is more stable, I'll give you. There are two organisms. Consider there are two organisms A and B. For organism A, the source of food is very limited. Like there is no other options. Only that source is the source of food for that organisms. And for organism B, the source of food is differs. Like a variety of food is there for its source, which is stable. Then B is very stable. So the organisms which is there in the food web, it is very stable than the organisms which which is there in the food chain, or which depend on the very minute number of source for their food. Those are all unstable organisms, and the organisms which are depending on very diverse kind of food, or depending on very diverse kind of other elements in the name of food, it is very stable in the environment. Okay, next what we discussed? Pyramids. What is this pyramids actually? Ecological. What is ecological pyramid? I guess I gave a definition. What is ecological pyramid? What does it mean? It's a graphical represent. I guess something I dictated like that. It's a graphical representation of energy flow in an ecosystem. Then in terms of energy, in terms of stored energy, that too in different trophic levels. I discussed it, I guess. What are the three kinds of pyramids we discussed? Three kinds of pyramids we discussed. Energy, pyramid of energy, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of numbers, and which is both what is that upright and downward, or you can say upright and another word inward. And only upright is energy. And what is the example I gave for the energy? Consumers, like that. And numbers, for the upright, what is the example I gave? Upright. Tree bird is for the invert. Same, producer, herbivores. Invert, tree bird, that example. And pyramid of biomass, what is the upright example? Same thing, I guess, producers. And invert, aquatic, right? Next, what we discussed? Next, what we discussed? Bio? Yes, bioaccumulation we discussed. What is first one is bioconcentration. What is bioconcentration? Intake of the toxic elements into particular organism's body, right? And concentration means, accumulation means when the toxic element started to accumulate in the body and increase the toxicity in the particular organism's body. That is called, and this is in a particular trophic level, which is bioaccumulation is in a particular trophic level. But after some time, what happens? The concentration of particular toxic element going to increase and increase. And certain point of time, these toxic elements started to transfer to different trophic level itself. Means fish to a bird, right? And bird to a maybe a vulture, right? We discussed, and this is a only possible reason, or it is the main reason for the death of the vultures. I discussed it, right? So this is biomagnification, right? In between the trophic level, the toxic element transfer in between the trophic level are the biomagnification. Within trophic level are the bioaccumulation, and enter bioconcentration, right? And vulture, you know about vulture? What is vulture, first of all? Vultures. And there are three kinds: kite and eagle, vulture. And do you know the difference between this kite, eagle, and vulture? This is zoology, my subject. Do you know the difference? Don't worry, I'll tell you. I'm very interested to teach zoology. Okay. Kite, eagle, vultures. Slight difference. Okay, same species. Slight difference. This kite, same, that Gadipata, same spelling, same pronunciation, but that is kite, this is bird. This kite means you can say Giduga, that is less weighter, less muscular, it's like a normal bird only. And this eagle is something muscular, you can say muscular, like a well built body. It looks like a gym body, okay, eagle. And this vulture is kind of bigger than this. ಇದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಗಿಡುಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಹದ್ದು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಇದು ರಣಹದ್ದು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ವಾ, ರಣಹದ್ದು. ಸೊ ರಣಹದ್ದು ಸಾಯಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಮೈನ್ ರೀಸನ್? ದಿಸ್ ಬಯೋಮ್ಯಾಗ್ನಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್. ಓಕೆ, ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್? Productivity. Okay, what we discussed in that? And I guess I gave this one. What is that? Characteristics of these toxic elements. Like it must meet some of the criteria. Then only we can call it as a biomagnification toxic, DDT. And I gave some examples also. And what are the characteristics? It should be a mobile, or it should be long lasting. It should be fat soluble, and it should not be water soluble. These are the characteristics. Biologically active. These are the things, right? Very important for the perspective of the prelims. Next, what we discussed? ಬೇರೆ ಏನು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ವಿ? Different. This one, productivity. What we discussed in that? Less latitude, highly productive. Higher latitude, less productive. Desert, less productive. Ocean, more productive, but rate of less productive. Next, and what is that? Equatorial rainy forest, I guess. Boreal forest, less productive, and rainy forest, more productive. That kind of we discussed, I guess, right? And the rest, what else we discussed? I forgot. You know, right? Something. Continue. Move on. Next, interaction. What are the two kinds of interaction we discussed? Positives and negatives. And within positives, the first one is mutualism. Mutualism means plus plus. And what is the example I gave? Pollination. Honeybee, pollination. Like mutualism is kind of temporary interaction between two different organisms. And so that, and there is no need to fauna to flora or flora to in between fauna or in between flora, that is okay. And because of this interaction, if both the organisms got benefited, then it is called mutualism. Symbiosis means this is not just a temporary, it should be permanent, at least for some period of time. And what is the best example I gave? Symbiosis, I guess that root node, Rhizobium bacteria of the cotyledonous plants. Next, and what is the use for that Rhizobium bacteria, or what is the benefit for that out of that interaction for that bacteria? It gets its habitat, right? Next, for plants, nitrogen. Next, proto-cooperation. What is this proto-cooperation? Interact with each other. And what is the example? Yes. Next, commensalism means one is not affected, zero, another one is get benefited. What is the best example? Shark and suckerfish. Next, negative. Another positive is there. No, negative. Competition means predator and prey concept. Predator are always benefited, prey lost its life. Next, predation, the same concept. Next, Amensalism, we discussed it, that elephant story, right? The ants lost its life, but for elephant there is no change in its lifestyle, so it not affected at all, so 0 and minus, so it is negative. And allelopathy means it's related to plants, and neem example I gave, I guess. And another thing, antibiosis means that microorganisms, I gave this one, penicillium as the example, right? Next, parasitism. Parasitism means host, like our worms, right? Intestine worms, what is that? Hookworms, roundworms, and tapeworms. These are all. If you visit Manipal, please visit. There is a auditorium in Manipal. What is that? Exhibition for this tapeworm, roundworm. All worms are there in that. I guess 10 rupees or 20 rupees charge they'll do, but wonderful. Okay, that is the real worms which extracted from the intestine of some patients. They kept it for an exhibition. It's like in a mass, in a cages. Okay, next. Types of species. What are types of species we discussed in first one? Keystone. What is this keystone? They balance, and normally a big player. And what is the example? Tiger, elephant, and etc. Next. Bigger. Foundation. Foundation means the kind of foundation for rest of the ecosystem. And what is the example? Same. Producers most of the time, and they are the larger in number. They balances everything, and most of the time they are the green photosynthetic plants. Next. Indicator, very sensitive for the particular pollutions, and they indicate something. Next. Umbrella means by in the name of protecting that species, we can protect the entire ecosystem itself. The best example, different projects, Project Crocodile, Project Elephant, Project Animal, Project Tiger. These are the things. Flagships. What is this? The different projects. Next. Endemic means particular region, will not get to see anywhere else except that region. Endemic. Next. Invasive means this is exactly opposite to endemic. It will invade to some other area, and it will do harm in the newly went area, right? Next. What are the example we discussed in invasive species? What are the floral examples? Plants. Congress. Parthenium. Next. Water hyacinth. Lantana camera. Next. The same. Congress, Lantana camera. Next. Fauna, what we discussed in that invasion. Burmese python, I guess, right? And another African catfish. These Burmese python and African catfish, don't connect this with the Africa and Burma. These are not endemic. This is a invasive. Because of that, I gave that as an example. Very important. Next. Success. This was the last topic, I guess, what we did. What is succession first of all? Converting. That is the finest definition I gave, I guess. Right? It is a change in the ecology, or you can say change in the environment from one form to another form. And what we discussed in that? Primary, secondary, and the process of the succession, nudation. Nudation means like setting the ground. After that, like primary succession we discussed it, right? Rock to soil. This is nudation. Next. Invasion means particular species, fauna and flora, getting entered into that stable land, or that ready to change land. Okay. Next. Competition in between the species for particular mate, or for food, or for other basic necessities. So after competition there is a reaction, right? Reaction may be at 2-3 kinds. What is the reaction? One of the species may migrate to some other, or one of the species may suppress or decrease its number, or sometimes they may differentiate their niche, right? Next, stabilization. Finally means climax community. Pioneer and what is the medium community called? Pioneer and final climax. What is the medium one? Middle one? What is the middle one? Serial stage. We discussed it, right? Serial. Pioneer stage, serial stage, and climax stage. I remember. Pioneer stage, serial stage, and climax community. Right? That was the last thing, I guess. Right? Anything I dictated there? What was the thing? Did I dictate the definition? Succession. Then pioneer community, serial stage, and climax community dictated? No? Take pioneer community. Pioneer community. Pioneer community. Pioneer community. The first group of organisms which establish the first group of organism which establish their community in the areas is called pioneer community. Example, lichen, moss. See, in initial days there is no equatorial trees like equatorial forest trees, like there is no jackfruit trees, there is no coconut trees, there is no banyan trees. Initially moss, lichen means a minute flora in pioneer community. Okay, so these big trees are climax community examples. Okay, so don't write pioneer community and the examples in the tree very well. It should be moss, herbs, lichen. Lichen, last class we discussed it, the white patches in the bark, right? Next, serial stage, or you can say microbes. These are the flora and microbes for fauna. Another example. Right. Serial stage, SERAL. Serial stage, the various development stage of a community. Various development stage of a community is called seers. Development stage of a community are called seers. The various development stage of a community are called seers. Seers. The herbs and shrubs. Herbs and shrubs. See, lichens and mosses are the examples for pioneer community. Herbs and shrubs are the example for immediate or intermediate. Usually grow after further weathering. Usually grow after further weathering. Weathering means weathering of soil, a rock weathered to form a soil, right? After further weathering and after much favorable environment, after moisture, after a much favorable environment like favorable moisture, favorable soil, etc. So it is an intermediate stage. It's an intermediate stage. The final one is climax community. Climax. The final stage of succession. The final stage of succession which leads to a stable community. Which leads to a stable community. Okay. Next heading is the types of succession. We discussed it. Types of succession. Types of succession. First one is primary succession. Primary succession. It involves gradual establishment of biotic communities. Gradual establishment of biotic communities on a gradual establishment of biotic communities on a lifeless ground. Okay. Next, secondary succession. Subheading. It involves the establishment of biotic communities. In an area where some kind of biotic community is already exist. Where some kind of biotic community is already present or exist. Okay, these are the two kinds of succession, and within ecological succession again divided on the base of the source of succession or the base of the drivers of the succession. If the succession happens within particular region or within that community, it's a auto, and if it is something outside from that community, it is allogenic, like that it is there. Take heading autogenic succession. Succession brought about by living inhabitants of that community itself. Underline word itself. Succession brought about by living inhabitants. Succession brought about by living inhabitants of that community itself. That means what? There is no invasive species, or there is no species arrival from the foreign places, or there is no something new species. The succession happening because of the same species which is there in that kind of environment. There is no foreign influence at all. Okay, this is autogenic. And directly against to that, allogenic or allogenic instead of allogenic. Allogenic succession. What is this? Entirely against to that. Autogenic means succession happens because of that place things. This is from the outside things. The succession happens, or succession brought out by outside force or foreign elements. Succession brought out by outside force. Enough. Succession brought out by outside force. Are called. Next, autotrophic succession. Autotrophic succession, another heading. The succession in which initially green plants are much greater in quantity. Initially green plants are much greater in quantity. Next, heterotrophic succession. Next subheading, heterotrophic succession. Heterotroph means initially the heterotrophs are much greater in quantity. Succession in which heterotrophs are much greater in quantity. You know the basic, right? Autotrophs, heterotrophs. Or you forgot or remember? Autotrophs means they prepare their own food. Heterotrophs means depend on some other persons or some other organism for its food, right? Take heading like a nutrient cycle. Let us discuss some of the nutrient cycle. Okay. What is nutrient first of all? And what is the source of nutrient? Nutrients are there in our body or not? It is there. Like when or where it enters our body, how it enters our body, entered our body. You know Panchabhuta concept? What is Panchabhuta? That is the source for every living and non-living things, right? Panchabhutagalu anta heltavaru. That itself is the biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem, right? So nutrients is part of them. Adi ella kadanu ide irutte, and it will travel from one source to another source, and one fine object to another fine object. So this traveling cycle is itself is a nutrient cycle. Particle nutrient, it travels from one particular object to another object. So it is not constant. It is in a motion. It will traverse different cycles. It travels through different routes. So it is having its own cycle. For specific nutrients having its own cycle. For water cycle, and sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle. So it's a cycle. It will not stable or it will not settle anywhere. It will move. It always constantly moving from one particular form to another form. It changes its form and it will move within ecosystem. Okay, this is a cycles. Take a note. A cyclic flow of nutrients. Nutrient cycle is a heading. Nutrient cycle. It's a cyclic flow of nutrients between. It's a cyclic flow of nutrients between biotic and abiotic components. Cyclic flow of nutrients between biotic and abiotic components. Biotic and abiotic components is known as nutrient cycle. Or what is another name for this? Last class I introduced it. Biogeochemical cycle. Same thing. One are the same. Nutrient cycle or biogeochemical cycle. And the next line, right? Nutrients enters into producers and moves through food chain. Nutrients enters into producers and moves through food chain and finally reaches the consumers. Ultimately it reaches to the consumers. The bound nutrients, BOUND, the bound nutrients of consumers, the bound nutrients of consumers after death they are decomposed and converted into inorganic substances. Decomposed and converted into inorganic substances. Decomposed and converted into inorganic substances, which are readily used. By plants or producers. So readily used by plants or producers, and again cycle starts. Next line, right? The major nutrients which involve in cycles are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, What is the this one scientific symbol? What we call for that? I forgot chemistry. C, carbon C, hydrogen H, then oxygen O, nitrogen N. Okay. Are cycled carbon dioxide CO2, CO3 means then O2 means oxygen, O3 means ozone, like that. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು ಇದಿಷ್ಟು ಕೆಲವದಲ್ಲಿ. Okay. Are cycled, nitrogen are cycled again and again between, these are the things, are cycled again and again between biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. Between biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. And I told you in initial, in biogeochemical cycle or nutrient cycle, there are two kinds. One is sedentary and another one is gaseous. Take heading as a gaseous. Take heading as a gaseous cycle. Gaseous cycle. And what are the different kinds of gaseous cycle? Except sulfur and phosphorus, rest everything in general are the gaseous cycle. And take first one, hydrological cycle. Hydrological cycle. What is this hydrological cycle? Nothing but water cycle, right? What is water cycle? Define it in a single line. Water cycle. Water cycle. The movement of water in a cyclical manner within an ecosystem. That itself is definition for hydrological cycle. What is the definition? The movement of water in a cyclical manner. Movement of water in a cyclical manner itself is a water cycle or hydrological cycle. Okay, ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ? Consider this is a, what is this? What is this? A water body, or you can say ocean. And evaporation. Then after evaporation, cloud, right? Cloud, and again because of convection, not conduction, cloud rises, and because of the normal lapsing rate, -6.5 degree Celsius per kilometer, you remember, like, and because of that condensation happens, a cloud forms, and after favorable environment, again clouds come down like convection, and it enters the atmosphere in the form of, if it is in the form of water, we call it as a rain, precipitation. If it is in the form of ice crystal, we call it as a hailstorms, right? Again it re-enters to the soil, and after soil, some area it runs over the soil, some area it sinks and it reaches the groundwater level, and finally the areas with witnessed water run or water flow, finally it reaches the ocean itself, like the precipitated water or the rainwater, after reaching the ground, it reaches to the nearby lake, after reaches lake it reaches to the nearby river, after river sea to ocean. So it's a cycle, again because of evaporation. This is one thing. Okay, write down. A hydrological cycle begins with, see, if the question arises in your minds, have this diagram, at least one diagram, okay, in your minds, half of, like, if this is your mains paper, this is your answers, like this, in this area write this diagram. Okay, a short diagram is enough. Now showcasing what is happening there. What is the thing what you wrote? The hydrological cycle begins with the evaporation of water from the surface of the ocean, as moist air is lifted, MOIST, moist air is lifted, it cools, lifted, LAFTED, lifted, it cools, and water vapor condenses, to form clouds, CLOUDS. Water vapor condenses to form, condenses means like decreases its temperature, condenses to form clouds. The moisture is transported, around the globe, GLOB, around the globe, until it returns to the surface, as a precipitation or rain. Okay, see, ಇದನ್ನು ಇನ್ನೂ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಹೇಗೆ diagram, like draw on sun here, because of the sun rays, evaporation, show this, and there is a land here and tree here, and because of the evaporation or transpiration of this tree, again, what is transpiration? The water is evaporated from the leaf, stomata, the stomata opening of the leaf. Okay, transpiration and evaporation is two code words in the hydrological cycle. Okay, the water vapor evaporated because of sunlight, and again from the leaf the water got transpiration ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. Okay, transpiration. Okay, then condensation at the cloud level, condensation, again precipitation. Instead of rainfall, write precipitation, a standard word. Okay, in our exam, don't write a rain comes back, don't do that. Precipitation. Okay, and don't say like it is a flow, the rainwater flow over the surface. Instead you can say like this, percolation of water. These are the words, percolation is nothing but water flow on the ground. Okay, percolation, or within ground, sinking and reaches the ground water. These are percolates down ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ವಾ, edges ಇಂದ ಕೆಳಗೆ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ, percolates down, movement of water called percolation. Okay, these are the code words: evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation and percolation. Okay, these are the code words of hydrological cycle. Enough. Take carbon cycle as a heading. Carbon cycle is which kind of cycle? Gaseous or sedimentary? Gaseous cycle only. What is carbon? The same carbon dioxide. Okay, carbon dioxide is also one form of the carbon. Graphite is also form of carbon, diamond is also form of carbon, right? Carbon is a kind of element. Take heading is a carbon cycle. Write something. Nature is constantly taking carbon out of the atmosphere. Nature is constantly taking carbon out of atmosphere. These processes are sometimes called carbon sinks. See how naturally carbon sinks. If you look at ocean water, it's a source of carbon, because most of the carbon amount sinked in this ocean water. Or if you look at any water body, in between the water particles there is a carbon storage. Okay, the water body itself is a sink for the carbon. This is the one thing. And another thing, we normally tell like deforestation is a reason for again carbon amount increase in the atmosphere, or carbon amount. This is the reason for the increasing carbon. What happens when what is deforestation? Cutting of the trees. So when we cut the trees, trees are the carbon sinks. Means lot many amount of carbon which is there in our environment, in our surroundings, is stored in the plants, or it is stored in the big trees. When we cut down the trees, suddenly enormous amount of carbon dioxide, or you can say carbon, just enters into our surroundings or our atmosphere. So this deforestation, or the carbon which is present in the bioorganisms, and the carbon which is present in our water body, our oceans, these are the best carbon sinks, and it is natural sinks. Okay, and we are artificially also sinking the carbon dioxide nowadays. You know this under earth carbon sink, we capture and sink the carbon, and under ocean carbon sinking, we are sinking the carbon under ocean also. These are natural, artificial. But natural is the carbon which is sinking, or carbon which is captured within the biomes, within the plants, or carbon which is sinking within the oceans are the natural carbon sinks. Okay, these are the things. And under this carbon cycle only, take a subheading photosynthesis, because that is the main source where which present, or the carbon dioxide present in the atmosphere going to sink into the plant's body, right? Photosynthesis. What is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is a kind of metabolic activity which happens in green plants, where the chloroplast is present. It is a kind of kitchen, or it is a kind of food preparation mechanism of the plants, where it uses the sunlight as the energy and carbon dioxide as a source. It produces oxygen. So what happens? Energy neither be created nor be destroyed, I told you. So the carbon dioxide which is sinked, or which is used in the photosynthesis process, it sinked in the, or it is stored in that biome or that particular plant. When you cut off that plant, what happens? That carbon dioxide again get entered into our atmosphere. Take photosynthesis, I'll dictate. The plants use photosynthesis to make energy and grow. Plants use photosynthesis to make energy and grow. They take carbon dioxide, CO2, sunlight, carbon dioxide, sunlight and water. And what is the byproducts of the photosynthesis? Oxygen and some amount of energy in the form of sugar. Oxygen, turn it into oxygen and sugar. Normally which kind of sugar? Glucose, exactly. Large areas of plants like rainforest help to remove lots of carbon from atmosphere. Large amount of plants like rainforest help to remove lots of carbon from atmosphere. When we cut down the particular trees, or when we cut down the trees, again carbon re-enters to our atmosphere. Okay. And I told you another source of the carbon sink is ocean, right? Take ocean as a subheading. See, in our UPS only this fan runs. Rest of the fans and rest of the lights, our UPS is very weak. Okay, right. Ocean. The ocean water does a lot, to remove excess carbon from atmosphere. Does a lot to remove excess carbon from the atmosphere. What is the spelling of atmosphere? ATMOSPHERE. Okay. Full stop. The carbon dioxide in the air, reacts with the seawater, to make carbonic acid in the ocean. Underline, to make carbonic acid in the ocean water. See, when it going to react with the air, water, like in between the waves, when there is a wave, water flow like this, right? So easily carbon dioxide or rest of the gases sinks here. Okay, like this during the wave. The carbonic acid in the ocean. Carbon dioxide in the air reacts with the seawater to make carbonic acid in the ocean. Full stop. If there is too much carbonic acid, it may lead to acid rain. So what is acid rain? See, when the cloud form because of these kind of water, or when there is too much carbon in particular ocean or in particular water body, and the cloud which is formed out of that water body, if it precipitates in particular region, obviously the pH level is much lesser, so it looks like a acid. The carbonic content in that particular water, obviously, which is more than the rest of the things, so it is an acid rain. Okay, and carbon is one form of the acid rain, and there is a acid rain is because of the nitrogen also, sometimes sulfur also, because of the phosphorus also. Okay, like this. What is the last thing? Acid rain. Full stop. However, some carbonic acid is good. See, tell me why some of the carbonic acid is good. That is one thing, and it is needed for particular organisms which is there in our underwater or aquatic animals. What are the kind of aquatic animals which needs carbon sinks or carbonic acid? Shell organisms, like carbonic shells, kappe chippu, so bere shell iruttalla, those kind of organisms need this carbon, otherwise they are not able to form their shell. So for their shell, what is the content which is there in the shell? Carbon itself, like that. Some carbonic acid is good as it is used by sea organisms to make their shells, SHELLS, to make their shells. See, what is limestone actually? Limestone is nothing but when these shells sediments, after we extract the sediments of these shells, it itself is a limestone. Okay, write the same. These shells will eventually become sedimentary. These shells will eventually become sedimentary rock. That itself is limestone. Sedimentary rocks, that itself is limestone. Okay. Takes a bedding, moving carbon into atmosphere. Let us discuss how it moves within the atmosphere. The movement of carbon within atmosphere. some processes of nature, under that, right? Some processes of nature are removing carbon from the air, What are the kind of processes remove the carbon from air? What are the kind of processes removes carbon from the air? Photosynthesis, carbon sink, right? And other processes are adding more carbon to air. Something adding carbon to air means, something adding carbon to air means that is the source. You can say source, right? Something adding carbon to air, so it is a carbon source. So adding carbon to air is called sources. See, I told you, like deforestation or cutting trees is bad because it adds the carbons to the atmosphere. Adun barkodi hege, like take subheading as a decay, there itself, decay. When plants and animals die, they decay. Decay means like finishing, or you can say the particular nash agi hogutte, kolt hogutte, something ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. Decay. When plants and animals die, they decay. When this happens, the carbon in their body, will either be released into atmosphere, or it will stored in the ground as a fossil fuel. Right, stored in the ground as a fossil fuel. And one of the school of thought is also agree the same thing, like the dinosaurs body and rest of the equatorial forest, that body itself is a source for the today's petroleum. One kind of view, okay. And what is the another source or another medium of carbon exchange? If you look at a particular organism body, look at human, our breathing, we intake oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. Take respiration, there itself as a subheading after decay, respiration, usrata or breathing. Every time you breathe, B-R-E-A-T-H, every time you breathe, you turn oxygen into carbon dioxide. This is normal in every animal on earth. Okay, see, something we burn means what is the thing which comes out from that particular thing? Biomass. Consider we burnt some grass, we burnt some trees, we burnt some animal. So what is the major thing which comes out of that body? Carbon. So after this respiration, take heading, subheading, combustion or burning. Combustion or burning. When plants, trees, combustion, BU, okay. When plants, trees or fossil fuels are burned, the fossil fuels are burned, carbon is released into atmosphere. Vehicular exhaust, the petroleum fuels only, right? the fossil fuels burn, the carbon is released into atmosphere. Okay. So ಇದನ್ನ diagram ಬರೆಯೋದಾದ್ರೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಬರೀತೀರಿ? Like this is a plant, again this is a water body. Write this diagram. Okay. See, this is sinking. Carbon sinks. Here also carbon sinks. Okay. And some the plants uses carbon also like this, and some of the carbon settled as a sedimentary, right, as a fossil fuel. And carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, normally CO2, major gas in the atmosphere, CO2, again it re-enters because of the breathing, like I have one animal here, because of the breathing of animal, because of the breathing of person, CO2 again enters, and like this. And vehicle, the axle of vehicle, again which adds carbon. And if you look at the factory and the household, the gas pipes, everything which adds carbon to the environment, this is atmosphere. Take it as atmosphere. The 2-3 very important things. One is one plant, right, one plant, and another thing, man or one animal, that is respiration. This plant is for photosynthesis, that purpose, and carbon sink, and water body is for the carbon sink, and this one vehicle is for the fossil fuel decay, or you can say one industry for the air pollution, or you can say carbon. And once write CO2 in the atmosphere, again it re-enters back like this, one cycle. And within ground also, like underground, right, a stem, right, one stem. This is a dead organic matter, itself is a carbon sink, a stem of a tree, or you can say dead organic human body, buried human body. Okay, this is source of carbon, or buried animal body, skeleton, right. Okay. Here also underwater, a shell organisms, it uses shell organisms, right, shell organisms, like this. This is the entire carbon cycle. The code word here is, here in the open atmosphere word, and here one tree, and the shell organisms here, and some of the pollutants in the form of the carbon, and here it is a carbon sink, and under water also a carbon sink. These are the words. And respiration and photosynthesis are the another two. Okay. Burning fossil fuel, anyway you showed in that vehicle. Okay, these are the carbon cycle. You can sit here. Nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is a pollutant, or is it an important factor or important gas? First of all, is it a gas cycle or sedimentary cycle? Gaseous cycle, right? Is it important gas for the life, or is it pollutant for the life? Is it toxic to the life? Toxic? Both. Nitrogen is an important factor in every living being body, right? If you look at any kind of particular any kind of plant, any kind of animal, any living organisms, some part of nitrogen, it is needed for that particular body or that particular biotic organisms. So nitrogen is a very essential factor which is needed for all organisms. Okay, right, like that only. Nitrogen cycle. This is a basic. Plants and animals could not live without nitrogen. Have this in your mind. Sometimes this a little knowledge may help you to come to a particular kind of conclusion in your claims, educated guesses. Okay. Plants and animals could not live without organisms, without nitrogen. Without nitrogen. It is an important part of many cells. It's an important part of many cells and its processes. Many cells and its process. See, if you look at our double helical structure of DNA, like spiral structure, ಹೀಗೆ ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮದು ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಬೇಸ್ ನೋಡಿದರೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಅಂತ ಐ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್ ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಬೇಸಸ್ ರೈಟ್ ವಿದಿನ್ DNA ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಸೆಲ್ಲಲ್ಲೂ ಜೀನ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಇದಿರುತ್ತೆ ಏನೋ ಡಿ ಎನ್ ಎ ಒಳಗೆ ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ದಿಸ್ GC AT ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ ಅಡಿನೈನ್ ಗ್ವಾನಿನ್ ಸೈಟೋಸಿನ್ ಥೈಮಿನ್ ಅಂತೆಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ. ಓಕೆ, ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಆಲ್ ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ every compound of a cell or within cell also there is some amount of nitrogen. So you can't even imagine without nitrogen, you can't even imagine the life forms without nitrogen. So nitrogen is there everywhere. We are not able to find it like oxygen, we are not able to find it like we are not used for the breathing, right? So ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅನ್ಸುತ್ತೆ ಇದೇನು ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ, ಬಟ್ in our cell within our DNA in the form of nitrogen bases we need nitrogen. This should be in our mind. Okay, what is the thing, last thing I dictated? Important parts of many cells and its process, such as amino acids, proteins, amino acids, proteins, amino acids, proteins, DNA, RNA, it also needed to make chlorophyll in plant. Chlorophyll. If the statement is like without nitrogen, right, don't write, listen. If the statement is like without nitrogen we are able to do photosynthesis, the statement is wrong. Or without nitrogen you can for photosynthesis nitrogen is not needed, this is the statement. This is a wrong statement actually, because for photosynthesis there is a need for the chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the need, because within green plants, stomata, without chlorophyll there is no photosynthesis. For formation of the chlorophyll you need nitrogen. Okay, so interconnected like this. ಪ್ಲಾಂಟಿನ ಎಲೆ ಒಳಗೆ ಗ್ರೀನ್ ಲೀಫಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಲೋರೋಫಿಲ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದರಿಂದನೇ ಫೋಟೋಸಿಂಥಸಿಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಕ್ಲೋರೋಫಿಲ್ ಇನ್ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್, ವಿಚ್ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ಫೋಟೋಸಿಂಥಸಿಸ್ ಟು ಮೇಕ್ ದೇರ್ ಫುಡ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎನರ್ಜಿ. Which plants use in photosynthesis to make their food and energy. Double helical structure ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಬರೆಯೋದು ಹೀಗೆ ಬರೆಯೋದು. ಹೀಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬರಿಬೋದು. ಓಕೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಬೇಸಸ್ ಬೇಕಂದರೆ AD GC ಹಾಗೆಲ್ಲ ಬರೀತಾ ಹೋಗ್ಬೋದು, ಅದಲ್ಲೇನು ಬೇಡ, ಹೀಗೆ. ಓಕೆ, ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಟೇಕ್ ಹೆಡಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರೋಸೆಸ್ ಆಫ್ ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಸೈಕಲ್. ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದ್ರೆ ಸಾಕು, ಲೈಕ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಸೆಲ್ ಒಳಗೂ ನೈಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತ. ದಟ್ ನಾಲೆಜ್ ಇಸ್ ನ್ಯಾನೋ. Process of nitrogen cycle is heading. Process of nitrogen cycle. Does bacteria has any role in the nitrogen cycle? Bacteria have any role in the nitrogen cycle? We discussed while discussing symbiosis. Nitrogen fixing bacteria are rhizobium bacteria. It fixes nitrogen which is present in the soil, or which fix the nitrogen which is present in the environment to the soil. These are all we discussed, right? So bacteria also having some of the role in the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen also runs through the bacteria, or it's one of the medium out of other medium, right? Take the most important part of the cycle is bacteria. The most important part of the nitrogen cycle is bacteria. What is the spelling of bacteria? Bacteria. Bacteria help the nitrogen change between the states. Nitrogen change between the states, so it can be used. See, the nitrogen which is present in the environment, the plant is not able to absorb those nitrogen, so it need to be fixed within the soil. This nitrogen fixation is the thing done by the bacteria. This is the process. Okay, normally with the carbon dioxide which is present in the atmosphere directly absorbed by the plants, that capacity is not there from nitrogen perspective. So for the nitrogen which is present in our environment is not able to absorb by the plants. So fixation of the nitrogen is very important factor. That fixation is done by the bacteria. Okay. So bacteria is having tremendous role in the nitrogen cycle. That should be in your mind. Okay. When nitrogen is absorbed by the soil, different bacteria help it to change states. States means one form to another form. Okay. When nitrogen is absorbed by soil, different bacteria help it to change states. So it can be absorbed by plants, animals, then get their nitrogen from plants. Now take the heading of process of nitrogen cycle. Let us discuss one by one what happens. See, I told you the nitrogen which is present in our open atmosphere, that is not able to absorb by the plants. So the plant needs another form of nitrogen. Nitrogen is in a different form only, called ammonium. Okay. See, this is the form which is the plant is able to extract or absorb out of the atmosphere, out of the ground itself, soil. So this nitrogen to ammonium process done by the bacteria. It is called nitrogen fixation. So you can take heading as a fixation, subheading, first one. Under process in the nitrogen cycle is the first heading, process of nitrogen cycle or process in the nitrogen cycle. Under that fixation. What is fixation? Fixing the nitrogen. Fixation. The fixation is the first step in the process of making. Fixation is the first step in the process of making nitrogen usable by plants. Here bacteria change nitrogen. Bacteria are going to change nitrogen into ammonium. ammonium. Nitrogen into ammonium. Again, another subheading, nitrification. Nitrification. Here another kind of bacteria. Nitrification. This is the process by which ammonium gets changed into nitrates. See, this is nitrogen. Nitrogen gets changed into ammonium, then ammonium gets changed into nitrates by bacteria. So plants having capacity to absorb this one. Plants going to absorb nitrates from the soil. Okay. So nitrogen in the open atmosphere, plants not able to absorb. So nitrates, and some of the plants directly ammonia. This is the thing. Nitrates is the finest form which all plants able to absorb out of the atmosphere or absorb out of the soil. Okay. So this nitrogen to nitrates, this transformation or change in the states is done by the bacteria. Okay. So bacteria is having tremendous role in the nitrogen cycle. Without bacteria, there is no nitrogen cycle at all. Okay, because that will fix the nitrogen, or it is the only reason for the change in the form of the nitrogen, which makes it useful for the plants or rest of the organisms. Nitrification. Next subheading, assimilation. 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 This is how plants get nitrogen. This is a process, okay, assimilation. This is how plants get nitrogen. They absorb nitrates from soil into their roots. Then nitrogen gets used in amino acids. Nitrogen gets used in amino acids, nucleic acids and chlorophyll. Nitrogen gets used in amino acids, nucleic acids and chlorophyll. Nitrogen gets used in amino acids, nucleic acids and chlorophyll. Okay. So this is a process like where the plants use the nitrates into different its metabolic activity. This is a process of using the nitrates by the plants into their chlorophyll formation or their nucleic acids, amino acid formation. Okay, these are the things. Next, ammonification as a heading. After assimilation, ammonification. Ammonification. It's a part of the decaying process. It's a part of the decaying process. DECAYING. It's a part of decaying process. When a plant or animal dies. Decomposers like fungi and bacteria. The decomposers like fungi and bacteria turn the nitrogen back into ammonia. Or you can say specifically turn the nitrates back into ammonia. Okay. Turn the nitrates back into ammonia. So it can re-enter the nitrogen cycle. So it can re-enter the nitrogen cycle back. Okay, this is the thing. Last thing, take heading denitrification. 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 Extra nitrogen in the soil, extra nitrogen in the soil gets put back out into the air. Extra nitrogen in the soil gets puts back out into the air. Extra nitrogen in the soil gets put back out into the air. There is a special bacteria that performs this task as well. There are some denitrification bacteria. There is a special bacteria which performs this activity as well. Okay, there is special bacteria for this also. So see, nitrogen cycle, you not able to imagine the nitrogen cycle without bacteria, because bacteria is the things which transform or which converts one form of nitrogen to another form of nitrogen. Nitrogen to ammonia, ammonium to nitrate, and nitrate is the finest part which or where the plants are the, you can say the producers or plants able to absorb out of the atmosphere or out of the soil. Direct nitrogen are not able to absorb by the soil or absorb from the soil. The plants not able to extract nitrogen directly, only it extract nitrates in the soil, and this nitrate is not a normal thing. It is a converted form of the nitrogen. That conversion is only happens by the bacteria. Only because of the bacteria, the nitrogen to nitrate conversion happens. Okay, there is specific bacteria for that. Okay, and there is a different name for that conversion. From the beginning, what we discussed in the nitrogen cycle, the process of the nitrogen cycle. The first thing, what the process? Fixation. Fixation means what? Fixing nitrogen into the soil, or you can say. So for particular bacteria, for that also, it is a first step, right? Next, nitrification means converting that into ammonia. There is also particular bacteria for that. Then what is another thing discussed after nitrification? Assimilation means using this. This is a process. After that, this nitrates is ammonification, means again converting back to ammonia. Ammonification, converting back to ammonia, means again it's continued cycle in the form of nitrogen, right? Again this ammonification happens through dead organic matter. Again there is a bacteria which converts the nitrate which is present in the dead organic matter, which converts back to ammonia. Ammonia means again nitrogen. Okay, so this is a cycle. So nitrogen cannot destroy. Nitrogen or nitrate which is present in the dead organic matter again re-enters to the atmosphere in the form of ammonium, and there is again specific bacteria for that ammonification process. Okay, so what are the process we discussed from the beginning? Fixation, nitrification, assimilation, ammonification, denitrification means extra nitrogen, right? Again there is a specific bacteria for that also. So nitrogen cycle means it is all about bacteria cycle, all about bacteria. Bacteria is the medium. Okay, these are the things. Next, this is all about gaseous cycle. Take heading as a sedimentary cycle. Let us discuss sulfur and phosphorus cycle within that. What are the sedimentary cycles? Sulfur and phosphorus, two major sedimentary cycles. And why we call it as a sedimentary cycle? Because the source, what is the source? It starts from the soil and ends with the soil, right? Sedimentary cycle. Take sedimentary cycle as a heading. In that, sulfur. Sedimentary cycle. In that, sulfur cycle. Okay. Sulfur is the element. Sulfur is the element important to ecosystem and the climate. Important to ecosystem and the climate. The majority of the sulfur is stored in underground. The majority of the sulfur is stored in underground. For example, under the ocean and within rocks. Under the ocean and within rocks. It occurs naturally. It occurs naturally in place like swamps. What is swamp? Swampy area, SWAMPS, swamps. Where the organisms decomposed, like ಕೊಳ್ತಿರೋ ಏರಿಯಾ ಆ ಥರ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, within bracket, right, where the organisms have decomposed, swamps. And volcanoes also. Volcanoes we discussed, right, in geography. Lava, magma, volcano. Volcanoes. What is the spelling of volcano? VOLCANOES, volcanoes. Okay, first off, humans add excess sulfur into this cycle. Underline volcanoes, okay, volcanoes and swamps. This is very important for the claims point of view. Swampy area and volcano adds sulfur into the atmosphere. Humans add excess sulfur into the cycle. How humans add sulfur into the cycle? Like burning or pollution through atmospheric pollution caused by fossil fuel burning in vehicle or in industries. Okay, fossil fuel burning is the main thing of the sulfur. Even in our nuclear reactor also, sulfur is a kind of nuclear waste, one of the, or you can say in our big industries also, and coal combustion also, in the electric manufacturing process or formation process, coal burning, sulfur is one of the main pollutant which comes out. So these are all various things, anthropogenic sources for the sulfur content in the atmosphere. Okay, next, steps of sulfur cycle is ending. Steps of sulfur cycle. So from the beginning, let's see, I told you the sulfur which is present in rocks also, the sulfur which is present within the rocks, how it enters outside? Because of weathering. Like, what is weathering? The conversion of the rock into the soil, and it not a sudden process, hundreds of years process. This slowly conversion of the rocks into soil, when it is weathering, slowly the sulfur which is locked within the rocks, slowly going to release to the atmosphere, right? So this weathering is the initial point. The rocks, by erosion, EROSION, they release sulfur that was stored in the rocks. When this sulfur which is present in the rocks enters the atmosphere, when this stored sulfur enters the atmosphere, after it touches the air, it becomes sulfate. After it touches the air, it becomes sulfate. Okay, see, in the next line, right? Plants absorb this sulfur through photosynthesis, some amount, okay, through photosynthesis, and make this sulfur organic. Next, animals, specifically herbivores and omnivores. Animals, specifically herbivores and omnivores, when they consume herbs or when they consume plants directly, the sulfur going to enters to these plants or these animals body, herbivores and omnivores body. The sulfurs directly which is present in that plant going to enters to the food chain. When they eat plants, okay, and sulfurs moves through the food chain. Sulfurs moves through the food chain as secondary consumers. And how secondary consumers how it reaches the secondary consumers? When secondary consumers eats the primary consumers, it enters and it reaches the tertiary consumers. Tertiary consumers, how it enters? When these tertiary consumers they eat again primary consumers. See, don't say tertiary consumers will eat secondary consumers. That is not possible. Secondary consumers means one who eat these consumers. Rabbit is a consumer. One who eat rabbit is a secondary consumer. So this tertiary consumer means top carnivores, lion and tiger. They are not going to eat these secondary consumers. They are also going to eat the primary consumer only. So these tertiary consumers or the top carnivores, they are going to get sulfur after eating the primary consumers. Now they are not going to eat directly the plants. The plants, the sulfur which is there in the plants is transferred to top carnivores through food chain only. Okay, because these herbivores are primary consumers, they eat plants, fresh plants. So sulfur which is there in the plant's body transferred to a primary consumers, and from primary consumers to it enters to tertiary consumers or top carnivores, like this. So food chain is the best source of its cycle or best source of its movement, best channel. Okay, this is the one. When animals or plants die, the sulfur which releases into atmosphere, the sulfur which releases into atmosphere or dissipates into atmosphere as sulfate, again atmosphere as sulfate, and also through its body when they decompose. Like if you bury the dead body of the plant stem or if you bury the dead body of the human, it will decompose, and while decomposing it also releases some of the sulfates into its soil. Decomposes. The sulfur in the atmosphere is returned to soil and water cycle, return to water cycle, soil and water cycle when it rains. So it will mix with the ocean water, it will mix with the rain water. So a sulfur cycle happens again, along with the water cycle, sulfur cycle happens. It mixes with the soil, it mixes with the water, along with the water cycle or hydrological cycle. It also moves like this. Okay, this is the entire story. Next, phosphorus cycle is heading. Phosphorus. What kind of cycle it is? Phosphorus. What kind of cycle? Sedimentary. Phosphorus. Phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is an essential nutrient for plants, animals. Right? It's an essential nutrients for plants and animals. So all, sulfur, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, everything is essential for the plant's body. Okay, if the statement is like it is not needed for a plant body, animal body, that is wrong statement. Everything is essential. Panchabhutagalu, ella element galu nam body alli there. If you go to a medical shop, have a look at the entire medicine which is present within that medical shop. What is that medicines? What is that medicines? Sometimes what happens, because of some diseases, because of some deficiency, our body not able to produce some of the elements or some of the amounts or some of the chemicals, right? And we take that extra chemicals which is needed for our body through medicines. So every medicine which is present in the medical shop, it is there in our body also. So something which is not there, we are taking from that. Because of some deficiency, our body is not able to produce that in a temporary period. We are taking in the name of the tablets, right? So all elements, this is this kind of knowledge help you to educated guess in your science and environment kind of questions. All elements which is there in our environment is necessary for our body, except some of the toxic elements. Okay, all natural elements you can say, which is important for our body, and it will remain always. It is there in our body, not only our body, in entire biotic organisms or entire bio. Okay, these are the things. Continue. It plays critical role in cell development. Underline this. These are very important. See, for calcareous shells, which is important? Carbon. For DNA, RNA, which is important? Nitrogen. For photosynthesis, what is the major source? Everything is important for the photosynthesis. What is the major source? Carbon dioxide, like this. Okay, carbon. It is a critical in cell development. Underline. And it is a key component of molecule. It is a key component of molecule that store energy, such as ATP. See, ATP means adenose triphosphate. ATP is enough. And DNA, lipids. ATP, DNA, lipids. What is lipids? Fats. Okay, the oils and fats which is there in our body, we call it as a lipids. Okay, full stop. Insufficient phosphorus in the soil. Insufficient phosphorus in the soil can decrease the crop yield of that region. So we are adding the phosphorus fertilizer, right? Phosphorus, potash, viryanal add martivalva. So it's a kind of fertilizer for our field. So it is needed for the plant's growth, right? If the phosphorus is insufficient in particular region, means it going to hurt the crop yield of that region, or it decreases the crop yield, enough, whatever. Here there are the key steps of the phosphorus cycle. Take key steps here, the key steps of the phosphorus cycle, like how it runs the cycle. First thing, rain and weathering causes rocks to release phosphate ions. Rain and weathering cause rocks to release phosphate ions. Rocks to release phosphate ions, and other minerals. This inorganic phosphate, see, I told you the sulfur and phosphorus, everything is trapped within the rocks. Because of weathering, this is going to release to the environment. See, when it releases to the atmosphere after weathering, this is not organic. the sulfur or it is phosphorus, it is inorganic only. After it is getting enter into the organism's body, then it will convert into organic. So in an initial note, it is inorganic components, sulfur and phosphorus, okay, not organic. What is the last thing you wrote? This inorganic phosphate is then distributed in the soil. This inorganic phosphate is then distributed in the soil and water. Okay, the plants going to take up these inorganic matters. The plants going to take up these inorganic matters or inorganic phosphate from the soil. And how it enters the animal body? Animal will not going to extract from the soil, right? Then how it enters the animal body? Through plants only, after eating, like sulfur. When the consumers eat these plants, it reaches animal's body. Once it reaches animals or plants body, these phosphates incorporates, means enters into the organic molecules, incorporates into the organic molecules, like DNA, such as DNA. And finally, when animals or the plants die, the animals or plants dies, it decays, DECAYS, it decays the organic phosphate, and return to the soil. It decays the organic phosphate and return to the soil. Okay, so within soil, the organic form of phosphate, made available to plants by bacteria, underline, made available to plants by bacteria. These bacteria that break down organic matters to, why it breaks down organic? Because now it's in an organic form. Again we have to convert from organic to inorganic, right? So because phosphate is inorganic, again these bacteria are going to do that work. Plants by bacteria that break down organic matters to inorganic form, of phosphorus, full stop. This conversion from organic to inorganic is called mineralization. Okay, something is converting from organic to inorganic means it is mineralization. Mineralization is something forming. What is forming here? Minerals is not organic, it is inorganic, right? A rock is a kind of mineral, I discussed in geography. Next line, right? Phosphorus in soil can end up in waterways, and eventually oceans. Once there, it can be incorporated. Once there, it can be incorporated into sediments over time. It can be incorporated into sediments over the time. Okay, these are the things. Any doubts? The phosphorus, simple. Okay, before it is a when it is there in the within the rocks like sulfur, it is in an inorganic mode. After weathering, it enters to the atmosphere in an inorganic only, and because of some of the bacteria, it changes its forms and it absorbed by not directly absorbed by the animals, it is absorbed by the plants, and after herbivores, it transferred to rest of the animals. So when die, the animals or the plant's body going to die, or when it dies, when it is decomposing, again it changes its forms from organic to inorganic. This is called mineralization. That is also some of the bacteria going to roll their, going to play its role, organic to inorganic. It is called mineralization. So it is again re-enters to the atmosphere. So it is a cycle. It is called phosphorus cycle. So this phosphorus and sulfurs are the sedimentary cycle because it starts from the earth crust or the soil and it ends with the soil itself. Okay, and rest of the gaseous cycle is not that the case. Like it is a wide or vast, not only earth to earth or not only soil to soil. Okay, so it is these two are the sedimentary cycle. Which one? Sulfur and phosphorus, and rest of the three are rest any gaseous cycles are the gaseous. Okay. You ಬೇಕಾದರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ after you went home, while revising this sulfur and phosphorus, you can draw your own map for that, like how it enters the plant body and how it decays after the life of that plant, and how it again re-enters to the earth, and how it from the rock, first draw a rock map, draw a diagram of rock, and put an arrow mark like this, and for this arrow mark write weathering. Okay, after weathering write a soil, and in that soil inorganic sulfate like that, or inorganic, and after it enters to plant write it as a organic and enters to the DNA like that, DNA of that particular plant, like this cycle on baribodu. Okay, again inorganic, organic to again inorganic, that is mineralization, again re-enters to the atmosphere like that. Okay, baribodu. These are the biogeochemical cycles, or you can say nutrient cycles. Or the UPSC aspirants feel very difficulty in this area. Okay, the what we call toughest area of the environment is over. From the beginning, what we discussed, this is the toughest area. Rest everything is simple. Okay, like cats, biodiversity, adu simple concepts baratte. These cycles, and before that niche, ecotone, and rest of the things, species, and rest of the concept we discussed, that is the toughest area. In that, this one is the toughest area, they feel. With the proper notes, you can able to dissect it. ನೀವು ಬುಕ್ಕಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಿದ್ರೆ ಇದನ್ನೇ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬ ಏನೇನೋ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಫ್ಯಾಟಿ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ದಪ್ಪ ಇದೆ, ವೆರಿ ಥಿಕ್, ಓದೋಕ್ಕೆ ಕಷ್ಟ, ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ದೇ ಫೀಲ್ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್. Rest of the aspirants with proper knowledge, with proper notes, you can able to attempt these questions in your mains also. If they ask write the sedimentary cycles for 10 marks, you are able to write sulfur and phosphorus cycle, no? What is there in this? Writing two diagram and explaining that in the same manner. If they ask the the water cycle or hydrological cycle and carbon cycle for the 10 marks, you are able to answer now, right? Drawing two simple diagram and writing some points, enough for that. Okay, these are the things. Take heading as aquatic ecosystem. Let us discuss. What is aquatic ecosystem? See, this is over. Okay, every biogeochemical cycle or nutrient cycle is finished. This is a new chapter itself. We started with new chapter, aquatic ecosystem. See, I told you, what is ecosystem first of all? What is ecosystem, man? Huh? Huh? Oh, it is the interaction between the biotic and abiotic. If it is an interaction in a on land, it is called terrestrial. If it is within water, we call it as aquatic. Aqua means water, aquatic means within water. Okay. Right. Aquatic ecosystem consists of aquatic ecosystem consists of water as the main habitat. Water as the main habitat. So aquatic ecosystem means is there in only one type, or again there is a difference, or different kinds, types within that? Obviously fresh water, salt water, right, saline. Take classification of the aquatic water, aquatic ecosystem. Classification done on the base of salt concentration. Classification done on the base of the salt concentration. First one is freshwater ecosystem. Freshwater means, like, is that water fresh because of that fresh water, or how it is? What is this freshwater means? If the water is old, then that is not fresh water. If the water is very fresh, yesterday rainfall happens, or yesterday because of the yesterday's precipitation, if the lake fills, then that is fresh water. Is that the case? Then what is fresh water? Fresh in terms of its salinity. Okay, if the salinity of a particular water is less than 5 parts per million, ppt, or parts 5 ppt ಗಿಂತ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಇದ್ರೆ salinity, okay, 5 ppt ಗಿಂತ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಇದ್ರೆ, or you can say parts per 100, not parts per million, sorry, parts per 1000, not 100, parts per 1000, ppt, parts per 1000, okay, ppm alla, pph alla, parts per t, parts per 1000, okay. If the salinity is less than it, see, don't say if the salinity is 0, then we call fresh. There is no salinity 0 water. If some water is salinity 0, like there was some advertisement, what is that water purifier, AquaGuard, 0% salinity, the worst advertise ever, okay, because if it is 0% salinity means that is not suitable to drink. You need some of the minerals, you need some of the salts that is needed for your body, okay. 0 salinity or very purified water, you know this, in lab we use that, it's a moderator. What is that water? We use some water in lab also, we use chemical lab, chemistry lab use ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಲ್ವಾ, ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ, which water? Yes, distilled water is also 0 salt water, okay, that is not suitable for drinking, okay, there is no content at all, there is no minerals at all. So if the water purifier is working very fluently or very efficient, it is highly efficient, it pures everything, that means that is the worst water purifier, okay. So this fresh water is on the basis of not its days, on the basis of its salinity, okay. If the salinity is less than 5 parts per 1000, then we call it as a fresh water. Example, tell me. Sea water is the example? No. Then lake, pond, well, right? Springs, streams, river, right? Next, marine ecosystem. Marine ecosystem. Marine means what? Something ocean. Means if the salinity is more than, or on an average 35 ppt, 35 parts per 1000, then we call it as a, see, what is 35 parts per 1000? in 1 liter of water, if 35 grams of salinity or 35 grams of salt was there, then we call it as a minimum 35, maximum whatever, minimum 35, more than only, equals to or more than, okay. Next, brackish water, brackish, third one. What is brackish? See, don't confuse brackish with the brine, okay. Brackish is less than 35, more than 5 to less than 35, in between. Yes, it is a saline, not a fresh water, but it is not more than the 35, it is in between the 5 to 35. Brackish. Normally, where you will witness this kind of water? See, it should be less than the saline in terms of salinity. Where you will witness this kind of water? Backwaters, lagoons, right? Mangrove swamps, estuaries, deltas, right? Like where, what is delta and estuaries? Where river water reaching the ocean or sea, you can say sea. So when river water is entering into the sea means what? It is diluting in that region. So the salinity is obviously less than the inland or within sea, okay. Take heading, zones of aquatic ecosystem. Zones, I discussed this before in geography only, anyhow. Zones, yes, zones of aquatic ecosystem. Zones of aquatic ecosystem, okay. Consider this is the territorial zone, like land, and consider this is a water. Right, have the same diagram in your notes. This is a water, or you can say ocean, okay. And the zone till here, from here to here, are called neritic zone. Change color. Neritic zone. Neritic zone. Neritic zone. Here to here. It's like there is no continental slope, just a shelf. The shelf zone is called neritic zone, okay. After that is called pelagic zone. The entire this region is called pelagic. On the surface, this is on the surface, okay. Pelagic zone, PELAGIC, pelagic zone. From here to here it is called neritic zone. Here to here, the rest of the things are called pelagic zone. This is on the surface, not within depth, not vertical section. This is horizontal, okay. Pelagic and neritic and pelagic. Neritic and pelagic. Again, in vertical up to 200 meter, we call it as a photic zone. Photic zone means where sunlight enters. And below that, some area is called dysphotic. And aphotic below that. Aphotic means normally below 1000 meter. Normally below 1000 meter we call it as a 1000 meter we call it as a aphotic. In between 200 to 1000 dysphotic zone. Below 1000 aphotic means sun rays never reach at all. Here aphotic. Photic, dysphotic and aphotic. neritic and pelagic zones. Okay. And within this pelagic area, the surface area is called epipelagic, means here this region, epipelagic. Epipelagic. Again, this is a transfer. Epipelagic. And under epipelagic is we call mesopelagic. Mesopelagic. Below epipelagic we call it as a mesopelagic. And below that bathypelagic here. Bathypelagic. Bathy means below. Bathypelagic. And final at the abyssal plain. This is the abyssal plain of the ocean. This is abyssal pelagic. Abyssal pelagic. Abyssal pelagic. Normally this bathypelagic rated in a aphotic zone. Okay. And abyssal pelagic means near the ground. Abyssal ground, we call it as abyssal ground, right? This trench and everything. Abyssal means a surface of the ocean, under ocean surface, abyssal, a normal plain. That area we call it as a abyssal pelagic, and above that we call it as a bathypelagic in the aphotic area. Okay, this bathypelagic below the dysphotic. Write this bathypelagic below the dysphotic. Okay, and within this epipelagic is the photic zone, and mesopelagic below epipelagic. Okay, these are the things. See, you can say the entire ocean water you can divide into two things, horizontally neritic and pelagic, and vertically into number of things like number of divisions like photic, dysphotic and aphotic. Photic means where sun rays enters. Dysphotic means minimum number of sun rays, maybe around 1000 meters, means around 1 kilometers, and aphotic means where sun rays never reaches at all, means below that dark area. And in the pelagic zones, if we took at the transverse section of the ocean, the surface layer is called epipelagic, and below this epipelagic we call it as a mesopelagic, and bathypelagic is the area which is under the mesopelagic, normally in the aphotic zone. So bathypelagic, it is a dark area where sun rays never reaches, and on the abyssal plane we call that area as a abyssal pelagic. This is the abyssal plane. Oceanography, do you remember? Oceanography. Oh, everybody absent? Okay. See, oceanally again, oceanography again ಇದನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಥರ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ರೆಂಚ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಓಕೆ, ದೆನ್ ಮೌಂಟ್ಸ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಓಷಿಯಾನಿಕ್ ರಿಡ್ಜಸ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಓಕೆ, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ. ವಿಡಿಯೋ ನೋಡಿ, ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಕಳಿಸಿದ್ನಲ್ವಾ, ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ ಯಾರು? ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ? ವೆರಿ ಗುಡ್. Economy. Why not geography? That's there. We recorded video from the back, right? So it's not clear. Somewhat. Is this understood? Everybody? Any doubts here? No? Important. Okay. Normally this abyssal pelagic and everything is 4 kilometers. Within water 4 kilometers means 4000 meters. Okay. This abyssal pelagic normally 4000 meters. Okay. Abyssal plain. So 4 kilometers depth irutte ನೋಡಿ ocean kilopare. And if it is trench means again depth. Okay. Depressions. Let us discuss one by one. Take heading as aquatic organisms. See how we can differentiate the organisms of the aquatic organisms on the basis of where they live or what is their habitat. If it is live in a surface, there is a different name. If it live in a moderate environment or moderate level, a different name. If it is live in a abyssal plain near, there is a different name. Okay, batho something. like this. First one, Neuston, 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 Neustons or Neuston. That these kind of organisms are Neustons rest or swim on the surface, maybe a stable, maybe a mobile, rest or swim, but on the surface only, rest or swim on the surface, okay, are called Neustons, rest or swim on the surface, okay. Next, Periphyton, 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 1 second, Periphyton means that are attached or clinging to other plants or any other surface, clinging to other plants or any other surface, that are attached or clinging to other plants or any other surface. Best example, algae. Next, plankton, okay. What is this plankton? Which floats on the surface water, normally minute organisms, small organisms. Best example, phytoplankton. Phytoplankton is like a algae, blue-green algae, right? Green algae. And zooplankton is also another example. Next, nekton. Nekton, N-E-K, okay, you may not see. Nekton, N-E-K. See, the organisms which swims on the surface are called nekton. Small fishes. The organisms which swims in the ocean water, not very depth, in a surface area. Organisms that swims on the surface are called nektons. Swims. Best example, fishes. Next, benthos. Benthos means ಏನಿರ್ಬೋದು? Benthos. Something benthos means it is under or something below. Okay, benthos means which is attached to this pelagic or the organisms which present at the surface of the ocean are called benthos, are attached bottom. They are attached to bottom sediments of the oceans, are called benthic animals or benthic fishes. Okay, the organisms which is attached to the bottom sediments are attached to the benthic region of the ocean, a sedimentary region, surface of the ocean are called benthos. Okay, these are. Next, take heading, factors limiting the productivity of aquatic life. What are the factors limiting the productivity of the aquatic life? Tell me the factors which limiting the productivity of the aquatic life. Sunlight is the one factor, temperature is another factor, right? And sunlight, temperature, transparency, oxygen, right? So first take sunlight as a subheading. Sunlight. Again, on the basis of the sunlight only we divided the aquatic ecosystem into photic and aphotic, right? sunlight is subsiding in that photic zone. Photic zone under sunlight. So this is one of the factor which determines the aquatic productivity, okay, or aquatic life. Photic zone. Photic zone means the layer which sunlight penetrates and photosynthesis can take place. A layer sunlight penetrates and photosynthesis can take place. Photosynthesis can take place. Aphotic means, next aphotic zone, as I did. Aphotic means, what is aphotic? Where sunlight not penetrates. Or penetrates in a too low manner, or penetration is too low, but respiration takes place. Respiration means a dissolved oxygen that is there. Respiration takes place. There is no sunlight but respiration takes place in a aphotic zone. This is all about sunlight. Then another factor which determines the aquatic life is oxygen, and this oxygen is not normal oxygen, dissolved oxygen, right? Dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen. In that first one, fresh water, 10 parts per million, 10 ppm. In fresh water, dissolved oxygen is 10 ppm, 10 parts per million. Oxygen enters through air. Oxygen enters through air-water interference or interface. Oxygen enters through air-water interface. And these dissolved oxygen helpful for photosynthesis of the aquatic plants. These dissolved oxygen helpful for photosynthesis of aquatic plants. See, my question is like, does temperature has any role with the dissolved oxygen? Yes, if it is warm temperature, if the ocean water temperature is more, then oxygen dissolution or dissolved oxygen in that area is less. Okay, it is having what we call inversely proportional relation, inversely related. When temperature is more, the dissolved oxygen of that region is less, and vice versa. If the temperature is less, the oxygen dissolution or dissolved oxygen of a particular aquatic ecosystem is more, dissolved oxygen is more, vice versa. Okay. So dissolved oxygen is very important. Okay. If oxygen is not dissolved, or if there is absence in the dissolved oxygen, means organism is going to die. Means the 10 ppm is the normal in the fresh. If the oxygen is below, if it is below 5 ppm, okay, if it is less than 5 ppm means this organism is going to die. Dissolved oxygen is much more important for the organisms to live within aquatic ecosystem. If it went below 5 ppm means organisms not able to survive in the aquatic ecosystem. Okay, these are the things. Next, transparency, that is another factor after sunlight. Transparency. Transparency, is it important? Like aquatic should be transparent, aquatic water, or you can say the water should be transparent or not, or turbidity. What is turbidity? Sediments which disturb the water transparency are called turbidents. which one is good? Transparency is good or turbidity is good? Transparency is good. Turbidity because of suspended particle matters. Turbidity, T-U-R-B-I-D-I-T-Y, turbidity because of suspended particle matters. Because of suspended particle matters like clay, silt, CLAY, clay, SILT, silt, CLAY, clay, SILT, silt, turbidity, TURBIDITY, turbidity can limit the productivity of life, can limit the productivity of life, can limit the productivity of life. So if the transparency is more means the aquatic life form is healthy. If turbidity more means it is not healthy, like that. Next, after transparency, temperature. It is also having some of the role to play. Temperature. Okay, it is also having its role to play. See, right, water has higher specific heat than air. Water has higher, this is the scientific thing. Water has, within double intercom, right, water has higher specific heat. Water has higher specific heat than air. What is specific heat? The number of heat which is required to increase the 1 degree Celsius. See, the number of temperature required to increase the 1 degree Celsius of air is less compared to water. So specific heat of water is more or less higher. Specific heat of water is higher than the air. Okay. So this is the scientific one. It is absolute, it's constant. Okay. So temperature change will be slower. Where air earlier, water earlier. Where it is slower, temperature change. In water, temperature change will be slower. See, this stable temperature would benefit the aquatic organisms. Means temperature fluctuate means that is fatal for the aquatic organisms. So here, because of the high specific heat, temperature somewhat stable, so that would be helpful for the aquatic organisms. The stable aquatic temperature would be benefit for aquatic organisms. Or temperature fluctuation is less, so it maintains stable temperature for the aquatic organisms. So temperature fluctuation means that is fatal for the organisms, that is not good. When the fluctuation is more, like air, it would be harmful for the aquatic animals. Okay, so temperature always should be in a mild mode, or fluctuation should be less. So because of having high specific heat, the temperature of the water is less, is moderate, or it is, you can say the fluctuation is very less. The fluctuation is very less. Okay. Already it's 4:30, right? Any doubts in our today's class? Once go through the topics which we discussed today. If you felt any doubt, please ask me. Otherwise, let us wind up our class here. Tomorrow the class is going to start at 10 a.m. Okay, and don't wait for the videos. Sometime you will not get videos, because in our last video everything went off because of some memory issues. It went off. We will not able to get back that video. So this video is not a stable. This is something unstable, you can say. So don't depend on these videos. Please do visit or do come to the class. Okay. Thank you so much.